Okay, so hello and welcome to another Q&A with me, Nikki Scott from UK Hypopressives, and Sam Blakey from Oobermamma. I presume that that's how you want me to introduce you, Sam. And Sam's also a senior trainer here at UK Hypopressives as well, so using hypopressives in her work as a women's health coach. So I'm going to hand over to Sam. And obviously there'll be a little bit of conversation going on as we go between me and Sam about different things. If you do have any questions, then please do give us a wave, give us a reaction, or write in the chat box. That's always a good one as well. So if you don't feel like asking on screen, then just put your question in the chat box and we'll come to them as we go along. When there's a natural break, we'll come to them. So we're going to be here for about an hour talking all about Sam's campaign for better postnatal care for women. I'll hand over to you, Sam, to explain. So if you just introduce who you are and what you do, and then let's go.
Thanks, Nikki. Well, I'm Sam, as Nikki said, and I am lucky enough to have discovered hypopressives and UK hypopressives some years ago in the early part of my being a personal trainer, when I started to work more with women with rehab issues and postnatal issues. And at the time that I came across hypopressives, I was actually living in Singapore, and I had a fitness company in Singapore as well. And I had tried to fix one of my clients' diastase, help her fix her diastase. And whatever we did, we just could not get it to hold. And then she self-taught herself, as it turned out, I realised quite badly, but she self-taught herself hypopressives off the internet. And I had never heard about it until then. And it kind of, even though she was doing it not well, it kind of really worked and well, made a difference. So I thought I would find out what all the fuss was about. And so I flew home and did the next course that Nikki and Rich put on. And I've been a thorn in their flesh ever since. No, I mean, it's just changed my work. And yeah, so as Nikki said, I'm a women's health coach. I started off as a personal trainer and then decided to focus more on my work with women postnatally. And so I moved back from Singapore nearly 5 years ago. In July, it will be 5 years, and set up my company here. And that's when I'd focus almost entirely working with women. And yeah, I really love it. It's the working with women really that has started me on this campaign, because I've got 5 kids of my own, 4 of which I gave birth to, and it was never a really easy recovery. And when I was 14 years postnatal with my 4th child, I discovered that I had a diastase quite by default. I'd only just become a PT and I wasn't involved so much in women's work then solely. And I used Pilates to fix it, and it took me months and months and months, maybe 6 months. And with hypopressives, we get much quicker response, which much quicker reaction. And so I just find it's simply, I keep on telling people, it's simply the best tool I have in my box, my toolbox. And obviously, as my business has grown, I've come more into contact with women postnatally, and I'm much more aware of how postnatal care is kind of still stuck, not in the dark ages, but it's still stuck in an area of impasse. It just doesn't seem to have changed. And I think it's largely because we women just get on with it. And if we have issues such as prolapses or weak bladder, pelvic floor issues, we just think, oh, well, that's part of being a mother, that's part of giving birth. And I personally think that's a bit too high a price to pay, and to have to live with a body that's changed to the point where you compromise your activities and you have to think about everything that you do, or you have to go and wear sanitary towels 24/7 because you leak. I had a client only last week I started working with, who she said the final straw was because she wet herself while she was playing football with her young son, and she's 36. That shouldn't be happening. And she thought that was okay. That was, until that point, she thought she could live with it. And then that was the final straw. And so a lot of these issues occur because people because women aren't detected as having what we call an abdominal separation. So I don't know what your backgrounds are, and I don't know whether you're PTs or you're medics or whatever, but a diastase is when your abdominal muscles have separated in pregnancy. Now, what we didn't realise, or what most people don't realise, that in the third trimester, 100% of women have separated abs, because otherwise you can't grow your uterus. After the baby is born, 1 in 3 will have a diastase after 1 year. So a year on from their pregnancy, they will still have an abdominal separation. And it's statistics like that that are very worrying. And so I started this campaign with the intention of trying to ask for, I mean, Nikki described it as a better postnatal care, and I have to be careful how I word it, because it is better postnatal care that I'm campaigning for, but it's to be more progressive. It's almost like we're stuck in the, as I said, in the dark ages. So I'm seeing women who had babies 30 years ago that were not checked for a diastase at their 6-week check. A very simple check, by the way, but I'm seeing women now who are not being checked, and so it hasn't changed. And so, so Nikki, if you don't mind putting on my the list of what I'm asking for in this campaign, I think I put a I don't know if we've lost Nikki, have we? Yes, we seem to have lost Nikki. We seem to have lost the host. I don't know how that works. I'll just see if she's texting me to say, no, I don't know where Nikki's gone. Okay, take yourself, if you want to take yourself off mute if you've got any questions or anything. I think whilst we wait to see whether Nikki comes back, I'll just see if any of you have got any questions. Or I can just tell you what. So basically what I'm asking for is for the 6-week check to include, so the 6-week check is what mums have postnatally. What I'm asking for is for the 6-week check to include having the diastase, the abdominals checked for diastase, because it's key from the NHS perspective. When women are not detected of having their separated abdominal muscles, if they go into the rest of their adult life, their parenting with that diastase, there will be problems that occur because your pelvic floor is dysfunctional. It's not able to cope with pressure from above, which is what hypopressives helps you to train your body to do. And you do further damage on your pelvic floor. Potentially, you could also have issues with your as I said, with your bladder, with leaking, and you can have prolapsing as well. And obviously there are lots of other side effects. You can have abdominal discomfort, your posture goes because you've got your abdominal muscles aren't able to support it. And so this simple check, if it's picked up at that time, at 6 weeks postnatal or 12 weeks if you have a section, then you know what you're dealing with. So then you won't go and lift heavy, you won't go back to running, you'll adjust your working out, your lifestyle, and you'll seek some sort of repair. Now, the other issue is we don't have a series of options of what to do to repair. So people who have significant diastases, and we measure them in centimetres, finger by finger, they get sent to see a physio if they have a significant one, which is considered to be 3 or above. They'll see a physio once who will send them away with a piece of paper with some Pilates exercises on. Or you have the Squeezy app, which is an alternative app that's provided by the NHS, I think. I think the NHS provide it, but its actual name is actually dysfunctional in itself because it's telling you to squeeze your pelvic floor, and everybody knows you lift, or should know that you lift your pelvic floor, you don't squeeze it. If you go for a squeeze, the chances are you're going to not activate it but work your glutes instead. So I always say to my clients, you should zip it up as if you're zipping up a pair of jeans, or midwives will sometimes say as if you're going into a lift and you press the button to the next floor. It's a lift. And then again with hypopressives, we teach it to work connectively with the diaphragm and with the other muscles as well. And the app tends to encourage you to just isolate it, and that's not how it should work. So there's lots of things that need changing. We need to have PTs that are registered with the NHS, that are postnatal specialists, so that people have a definite place to go and know that they can trust that person's background, that they haven't just done a weekend's course on postnatal, and that's the depth of their knowledge. And there needs to be more specialised women's health physios. So basically we need no more money, but my argument is that if we catch it at 6 weeks and we look at repairing it holistically, not surgically, then that will save the NHS tens of thousands of pounds in unnecessary interventions that come later. I'll briefly give you one example. I saw a 63-year-old lady. She'd had her last child 29 years ago and had been walking around for 29 years after 4 children in 9 years. She's back. That's a great picture, Nikki. She's back. Now we just need to see her video on. Marvellous, you're back. We lost you.
Well, hopefully it carried on. I'm not really...
You did, I carried on. You disappeared at the point I asked, could you put up the list of my requirements? So if you could pop that up, that would be amazing.
Hold on a sec.
So if you can find it.
Just give me 2 seconds, because I had that up there now and I had to close my computer down.
I realised that you'd had a technical issue.
So just give me 2 seconds.
At least the meeting didn't close.
Yeah. Come back.
Don't worry if you can't get it up. So this lady that, as I was saying, this lady that I saw, she had 4 children in 29. So she'd had 4 children in 9 years, and for 29 years. So the youngest is now 29. She's been walking around with a 3-finger diastase. So that much of a gap in her abdominal cavity. Okay, and it went down to 2 knuckles deep. So it wasn't an insignificant diastase. And now she's presenting with a prolapse. Thank you, Nikki. So now she's presenting with a prolapse. So my argument is, if she had been checked for a diastase during the 6-week check, actually, yes, she had them vaginally. So during the 6-week check, it would have been picked up. So that was 30 years ago. So, okay, you could argue, well, 30 years ago, we weren't that aware of this kind of thing. And indeed, I was having my children then. So you could argue that. But in the same week I met this lady, I also met another lady who'd had 4 children in 7 years, was in her late 30s. Her last baby was born a year ago, and she had a 5-finger separation down to 2 knuckles. Now, 5 fingers, so just under, so at least 4 fingers. And she had not ever been checked. Now, she'd had 4 children in 7 years, so that's a red flag. So she should have been checked either by her GP or midwife or health visitor, and none of them had done it. Now, a month ago, I did a webinar with 82 medics from across the country, and they didn't know how to check for diastase because it's not taught in medical school. So the second thing, if you look in this, for crying out loud, that's the name of my campaign, and it's Campaign for Progressive Postnatal Care. And we're calling for abdominal separation checks in all postnatal checks. For postnatal care to extend, this is where the progressive comes in, beyond the early months, into the first year and beyond. Because as I said, 1 year after birth, 1 in 3 women still have an undetected or a detected diastase recti, but there's a good chance that a lot of them are not aware of it. Okay, and then also we're calling to educate all practicing GPs and community midwives in how to conduct this check, and for maternity care to figure more extensively in medical school, because it doesn't. So it's like an afterthought. And we're calling for the NHS to consider employing pelvic floor specialist trainers within its hospitals, or alternatively, signpost to recognise qualified NHS registered PTs. And my argument here is that Kegels, which is the go-to for everybody, is not the answer, because it encourages you to use your pelvic floor in isolation, which is the opposite of what we're trying to do, which is that we use it connectively with the other ones. And also to put funding in place, obviously, to meet these additional methods, because I believe that if they did the sums, over decades, it would save the NHS hundreds of thousands of pounds. Now, the reason this hasn't happened before, thank you, Nikki, that's fine now. the reason this hasn't happened before is because we women are really good at just getting on with it. And again, my argument is, I see ladies who go, I've just finally decided to give myself some time, because that's the nature of our lives, that we don't feel that it's justified to give our body the time it needs to help recovery. So it's raising awareness. You know, and most people would say, what's a DR? I've never heard of it, because no one talks about it. And if you look at the research, there isn't any. It's really, really old. I mean, some of the best research I could see was 20 years old. You know, so all of that needs to change. So that's basically, I just got to the point where I thought, you know, I can either just keep on picking up these pieces, or I could actually be the voice that does something about it. And Nikki knows I'm terribly vocal, so you know, it's no problem. So Nikki, could you just put up that photograph for me? So this is the lady that I told you had to have 4 children in 7 years and had this huge diastase. So, and this was her before I started working with hypopressives with her. You'll get there in the end.
There we go.
Here she is. Okay, so this is her at week 1, and then this is her at week 11, which was last week. Now, it's not a great top she's wearing in the second one, so you tend to be drawn to her shoulders, but actually that's not a bad thing, because I want you to look at her posture as much as anything. I mean, we know that hypopressives does great things with posture, but it's not just hypopressives that have changed her posture here, although I'd like to give them a lot of credit. It's her mindset, because with hypopressives, I gave her a tool that she could use at home, that she could work with every single day, and that's the difference in 11 weeks. So look at her, but I mean, you can see the physical changes, you can see the change in her waistline, but to me, it's her posture that speaks volumes, because she's given up in the first one. She hates her body, she hates her, she's a tiny lady normally. She couldn't, with every other baby, she'd managed to lose weight. With this 4th one, she couldn't. And she had this terrible tummy, that, you know, this slack skin, and she gave up trying. And then she found me, and she came to a Pilates class, and the first thing I did was check her tummy and discovered the cause of the problem. And so she came and worked with me individually, and she's very on it. It makes it so much easier when the person you're dealing with knows they've got to put the homework in. And this is the result 11 weeks on. And her whole mindset has changed. She started to wear the clothes she loves again. You know, she's just standing taller, and her psychologically, having disconnected from her body, she's now reconnected with it. She's kind of fallen back in love with herself. Yeah. And I think it's tragic that we leave women to feel like this when they're doing such amazing things, because she is an amazing mum. Yeah. And being able, you know, Pilates was great, because I'm a Pilates instructor as well, but hypopressives just lets them take back control, because they can do it in their own time. So I can teach them, and I reconnect with them to check they're doing it right. But in between, they are the ones who are in charge of how much they do and how quickly it progresses them. And, you know, for me, that's dream material, because as long as they're committed, they're going to see results like this. And I think in this case, just to use an old hackneyed term, a picture does speak 1,000 words. You know, she's definitely a different person now. Thanks, Vicky, that's great. So that's, you know, I'm open to if anyone wants to ask any questions.
Absolutely. So in your experience, if you've got someone with like 5 fingers width diastases, what sort of time scale are you putting on that? Because that's always a really big question.
Yeah.
Most people, when they come to doing things for pelvic floor dysfunction, whatever it is, they're really like want to know how quickly it's going to work.
Yeah, so I'm a bit like a builder. I won't give you a deadline.
No, I understand, but I just want to see how you get around it, really.
Yeah, I always say it's a connective tissue issue, because trying to say that quite fast. So it's a connective tissue issue. So, and that's hereditary. So you can normally tell if you look at their tummy and they have a diastase and they've got a lot of slack skin, and you know it's going to be a bit of a harder trek. And for me, it's about, you know, the worry with some exercises is that you'll get a superficial closure. So you'll close the top deck, if you like, the muscles in the top will come together, but underneath there's no underwriting. So it's all about getting that tissue up. And that's the bit that's down to genetics, really. So you can normally tell the people that have got stretch marks, they haven't got the same connective tissue. So that's going to take a bit longer. So I normally say there's no rule book, and that it's really down to their practice. And for some people, I had a lady with a prolapse, grade 2, multiple prolapses. So she'd got a rectocele and a cystocele, mid-30s. And she took 8 to 12 weeks. So by 12 weeks, so she had a diastase, but by 12 weeks, we had to reverse her prolapse. So when she went, she was convinced it had gone. And when she went to her urogynecologist, his words were, wow, if I hadn't have known you'd had prolapse, I would think you'd never had a prolapse. But then tellingly, his next comment was, what have you been doing? And his next comment, when she answered, so she said, oh, I've been doing hypopressives. He said, well, if you want to be the 0.03%, that works for. And that was his comment. Wow. And that is what we're up against, the medics. Yeah. So I had a GP who I'm working with now, who came from that webinar, and she doesn't know how to fix herself. And she was so impressed with what I'd shared with her that she tried to share it with her colleagues, and they just weren't interested. So that's what we're up against.
Are they not interested because?
I don't know. It's because they don't know. So there's
much proof out there that what they're giving out as treatment for pelvic floor dysfunction is not the best. But that seems to be the gold standard. It seems to be the thing that everybody goes on about. Everyone knows about the Squeezy app. Everyone knows about doing pelvic floor squeezes. That's what we're all rambling on about. And, you know, I think that pelvic floor squeezes have been given a bit of a bad rap. And I think that there is place for them.
I've just given them a bad rap while you weren't here.
Within our toolbox, I think that there's a place for them for some people. But what really gets my goat is that they're given out as the thing to fix everything. It's like, you know, you don't go and get a part for a Fiat to try and mend a Vauxhall. Do you know what I mean? It's like you get a cheap car part to fix a Lamborghini. You know, there's every person has their own individual makeup, and to just across the board say, oh, you've got a prolapse, Kegels, you've got an incontinence, Kegels, you've got diastases, Kegels, you've got a weak core, Kegels, you've got to really strengthen your pelvic floor up, Kegels. It's just, you know, it's just bonkers really that we're doing that.
When we lost you, I did mention that I'm not a fan of the Squeezy app because I think it's the wrong name for it. Yeah. I just think it's encouraging people to squeeze and not lift. And we need to be lifting the pelvic floor, and also if you squeeze, you're more likely to put the glutes on. And also it encourages you to use it in isolation, which is not how we should be using it. Absolutely. So, so I agree with you. They give you some piece of paper. And I'm not blaming the medics. I think the caregivers do a great job. Don't get me wrong. I'm very clear on that. With the guidelines they're given, my argument is that the organisation that sets the standards needs a bit of a wake-up call, and they need to, and the medical council, so the society that's designing the courses needs to include more pre and postnatal care in their education. So because these GPs and medics were really up for it to learn, you know, and there I am teaching them how to check for a diastase recti. Well, I'm only a PT and a pelvic floor specialist. I'm not a medic. I'm not medically trained. And equally, I shouldn't be the first person to diagnose diastase, but normally I am. You know, so
it's interesting how it seems to be that the UK is very much stuck in the dark ages with the type of treatment that it gives out to women postnatally or doesn't give out to women postnatally. I'm very much stuck in the dark ages with how we are treated. You know, that whole, do your pelvic floor squeezes, oh, they haven't worked, oh, your prolapse isn't quite bad enough, or your incontinence isn't quite bad enough, we'll wait until it gets worse, and then when it's bad enough, we'll put you on the list for surgery. So that sort of seems to be the route, and and that's what makes me so, oops, someone else is coming in. That's what makes me kind of almost so cross, is that we put up with that, you know, and that it's been the same way for so long, that we kind of put up with it. And that's what's so fantastic and refreshing really about your campaign, is that it's about time that we all stand up and say that that's enough. This isn't good enough.
Yeah, I think we've been too busy.
Professionals to be qualified and to have the right tools to help us, not just tell us that the only thing that's going to help us is to strengthen our pelvic floor, to make it strong, because that pelvic floor is holding everything up when it isn't. It's working with us. It's working.
Yeah, I agree.
As part of us, you know.
But I think the important thing is that you don't just come up with a complaint. You try and provide a solution. You know, so my argument would be, okay, so I feel that there needs to be changes, as do many people, that we need, but then you need to say, what are those changes going to be?
Yeah.
What changes you're asking for? And then you need to say, well, who do you go to get these changes? So that's why I'm reaching out to the medics now and doing these national webinars. So, but I'm starting to work. I mean, Europe is so much better, and I work internationally. So I work with people in other countries. In Holland, you have somebody who comes and helps you for the first 10 days after you've had your baby. I mean,
well, in Belgium, I know that someone that I trained was saying that she literally hours, because she had a fairly straightforward birth, sort of no major issues. Within hours, she had a physiotherapist in her room,
yeah,
going through hypopressive breathing.
Yes, well, fantastic, yeah.
So she, you know, that's how she learned about what hypopressive was, because they, as part of their postnatal care package, they had some funded sessions. So that was kind of part of what they gave women. So
but in Finland they don't. So I'm working with a client who's a GP in Finland, and she didn't know she had a diastase until she did my webinar. And you know, so now I'm working with her. So it's not just us in the dark ages, there's other countries as well.
No, I mean we've recently, you know, obviously we've recently started to make inroads into Poland, and it's really interesting that in the UK we find it really hard to get bums on seats on courses anyway, and then majority of the people that we have that come on our courses tend to be Pilates teachers, yoga teachers, and then osteopaths and chiropractors. We very, very rarely have women's health physios on our courses in the UK. We have a sprinkling. They're starting to change, but there almost seems to be this slight kind of snobbery where they know better than us, and that they already feel like they're doing something like what we're doing, but they're not. The most of them are kind of a bit stuck in the dark ages, I think. And you go to Poland, and you know, we just recently had a course with 17 on them, and there was probably 2 out of the 17 that weren't women's health physios. The rest were.
That's amazing.
And so, you know, why in the UK, and I put that to any women's health physios that are watching this, why are you so close to something that has an amazing and profound effect on a lot of women, and you could be using to help alongside Kegels, alongside other treatments that you're doing. I just find it quite.
I see that Verity's asked what the response has been with midwives about hypopressives. So I have a friend who's a midwife. I work with quite a few midwives anyway now, but she was telling me that she's a community midwife with a lady last week who had been told by her delivery midwife that she probably had a hernia because she could see she was coning when she was trying to give birth. And this midwife friend of mine said, you know, it was patently obvious she didn't realise it was a diastase, because when I checked her, it was a diastase. But then she looked at me and said, but then I only know how to check for a diastase because you showed me how to do it. So you know, but that they were calling, I mean, okay, it is a kind of hernia because your muscular tissue is pushing through, but it's an elongated one and it's not treated the same. But even the midwives sometimes don't know what this is, but not their fault necessarily. I could argue, oh, well, I heard about it on the internet, so perhaps they could too. But it's the education further down the line. It's this hole in their education.
Yeah, I think that's the same in I think that's the same in lots of professions, you know, like the only reason that I found out about hypopressives is because I was looking for something as a personal trainer that could help me because I had these issues. So, and I was like, with all my personal training, I had pre and postnatal modules within my course. I did all that learning and none of that stuff was of any use to me. It didn't help me at all. And it obviously wasn't helping my clients. So I think there's big gaps in any profession, hands-on profession that's dealing with women and not just women. We know that hypopressives is fantastic for everybody, but I think just women in general, you know, like unless you specify or go into that side of things in depth yourself because you've got your own problem and you have to find a solution to that. I think that there's a lot of, I mean, I know lots and lots of personal trainers who just look at me like I'm talking gibberish when I talk about hypopressives. You know, there's a really great trainer in my gym and she has a recurrent back issue. She's really physically fit, she looks really muscly, there's nothing of her, she's in great shape, but it stops her from doing her training because she has a bad back all the time. And the other day I had some time and I started to talk to her about hypopressives and she said to me, I'll put it in my back pocket. She's American, but she kind of went, I'll put it in my back pocket and I'll consider that. And I thought, wow, you know, I'm giving you something here that will basically stop you from having this problem reoccurring. And yet you're just, and every time I see her, she's either jumping up and down, you know, full of energy, or, oh, I can't do that today because I've got a bad back, you know. And why go through that cycle when there's something out there that could really, really help?
Yeah,
it's that education.
Yeah, it is education, definitely. And the more we share it with people, what I loved is the webinar I did with the medics from around the country. I mean, I was really careful with my wording and really recognizing that they are hard workers, you know, but there is this hole in the service. Yeah. And they were really up for it. And, you know, quite a few of them asked if I would do a class afterwards. And then a couple of ladies wrote back to me, emailed me and said, this was so clear, I'm going to bring this into my 6-week check with I'm going to ask my patients, but they actually have to ask their patients if they can do the check on them. It's not a given because it's not a prescribed requirement. No. You know, but it's about, you know, and I was a journalist before I was a personal trainer, so I have the tools that I can write about it. My youngest son's given me a year to get on Holly and
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so yeah, and one of my clients uses the same pedicure as the presenter of Women's Hour. So the pedicurist has said, when you Instagram something, I'll share the Instagram with her. You know, people will pick this up. Women presenters will pick this up. You know, and I'm going to run the marathon dressed as a 7-month pregnant woman. So I'm going to have a prosthetic abdomen, and then at least if I'm walking, I won't look so slow. And just to advertise the campaign. But actually, pregnant women shouldn't be running marathons. So it's a mixed blessing. But the awful thing is that you have to practice in your fancy dress. So I'm going to be running around Harrogate looking like I'm 7 months pregnant. So that's my fun for October, but it will get me noticed. It will get the campaign noticed. So,
yeah, absolutely. You know, well, I mean, anything that I can do to help and promote it, as you saw over the last couple of weeks.
Thank you. Yeah, you've been great.
Organised this. I've been trying to put it out there. Any graphics that you get, anything that you need to share it, I'm sure that you know, and anything I can do to kind of get it out there, I will. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things that, like you. When we're talking about kind of gaps in education, it's the same, you know, it's the same with chiropractors, it's the same with osteopaths, unless they go and specialize. And a lot of the time they're seeing such a wide range of patients that they don't have kind of almost like have the time to go and do that specific, unless they're a woman who's got the issues, and then they tend to find something for themselves and then they'll bring that into their practice. So it's just a shame that every profession really that could help women, some of the ones I've listed and others that I haven't, don't have a section for learning how to train someone with hypopressives and do all the right assessments.
But I think you're right. The key thing is women who have the problem then go to seek the answer, and that it's not that they're told about the problem before, you know, so they're aware of it. They have to go and look for answers, and there's no clear signposting. So that's what this campaign wants. We want clear signposting to qualified people who have done more than just a weekend's course. So in Singapore, I worked alongside Australian physios, and I can't remember which lady. Oh, Bo, I think you're Australian. Great the way you teach your physios. I mean, they were some of the best physios I've ever worked with. And just accepting I didn't know everything and I needed to learn from somebody. Yeah. And they're much more hands-on. They're taught much more hands-on than our physios. Although our physios are great, the NHS practice isn't quite so hands-on. I think it's more so now than it used to be. Yeah, so I got to learn from, I had some good teachers, and that's what you've got to be prepared to do, except you don't know everything and ask the question. Yeah, you know, and my client was the one who introduced me to hypopressives. You know, I didn't know about it until then. So, but once I could see what it was doing, even not well, when she wasn't practicing it well, I knew it was a no-brainer. I needed to, and I flew 6,000 miles to do it. So it wasn't a cheap option for me.
We're very glad you did.
So am I. As I said, it's the best tool in my toolbox. So, yeah. And you know, I'm working with women who are in their 20s and 30s, and I'm working with women who are in their 60s, and I work with a woman who's in a wheelchair. You know, the amount of people, when you get a woman, now this is a bit personal, so I'm quite glad we're all female here, but it's not, it doesn't need to be, but when you get a woman of 63 saying, gives you a lovely review about how it's changed her life because her prolapse is lifted, and then adds, P.S. this might be too much information, but my husband says it's really good improvement too. So, you know, you're thinking it's great. It's, you know, women, I see women having dysfunctional sex lives as well because of it. It affects relationships, and you know, the way that lady was standing, you know, the resignation in her body for giving us 4 people who are going to give back to the, hopefully to society going forward. You know, if we stop having babies, we kind of grind to a halt. Okay, so we don't all need to have 4, but you know, we are the makers of the next generation. You know, when we get sick, we don't go to bed, we carry on. And so that's why I say when my mum got really exasperated, she would go, oh, for crying out loud. And it's when we women have had enough. And I just think, you know, there's lots of other stuff going on that's serious, I know, but it's time that people started to take us seriously. And I really do feel, you know, we are the makers of the next generation, and we shouldn't have to wreck our bodies to be able to provide that service. And if we do, there should be something to help us pick ourselves back up again.
And there should be the education there in the first place for the next generation to know that these things are going to happen. It's just part of life. And there's things that you can do to help yourself not to be in such a sorry state, and to help yourself once you've had your family, to help yourself afterwards, other than surgery or, you know, just being left.
And the postnatal care really goes on into menopause, because issues that you have postnatally earlier on will often rear their ugly head a bit later as you go into menopause, and all your hormones disappear and or change, and suddenly you're prolapsing. Well, why is that happening? You know, I had my baby 25 years ago, but it's connected. Yeah. It's connected to that pelvic floor damage then. So, you know, and those sort of things picked up earlier will make it, you know, I mean, that lady that until we started working together was facing surgery at 63 after 29 years of walking around with a 3-finger separation, a very deep 3-finger separation, back problems, you know, leaking urinary problems, and finally prolapse. So, you know, and it gets blamed on menopause, but actually it's probably triggered by much earlier than that.
I think generally women are starting to wake up though to the fact that, you know, I think there's a lot of talk around menopause, there's lots of awareness of menopause, so there's lots of positivity around it now. So it's kind of almost making it okay to get out there and find out information and talk about it. And I think it's the same postnatally, is that you suddenly, well, not suddenly because you have 9 months to grow the baby, but you have this baby that you have to look after. You've got no idea what you're doing, whether you're doing it right, and you hardly any sleep, and the last person on your list is you. But if we had better education, and we had just better knowledge about what we could have been doing, so kind of almost that teenage girl coming through school, instead of showing her some randomly awful sex education video and ticking that off the list as done, actually having some proper education in schools about how the body changes and what pregnancy does to it and what to expect afterwards. And I don't think it's scare tactics. I think it's just really sensible, so that when things happen, it's not such of a massive shock. There's not all this horror around it. There's not all this stigma around it, and that we know that there's some help out there.
Yeah, I agree. I think the something that strikes me is, as I said, we women just tend to get on with it. So women come to me, I think I mentioned this a bit earlier, and they say, I finally decided to give me some time.
Me too.
You know, and it might be years down the line, because that's the nature of it, because we just have to get on with it because our lives are so busy. You know, we're juggling childcare, jobs, running the household and all those things. And, you know, when a woman has a section, they go home the day after now. When I was having babies, they used to stay in hospital for about 10 days. If a man has abdominal surgery, the same muscle tissues, I'm sorry, men, if you're listening to this, but the same muscle tissues are cut through, and they probably wallow in hospital for about a week. They're not allowed to play golf for 12 weeks, you know. And yet the mum is running around the household dealing with all the kids. You know, car seats, baby car seats, why do they weigh a ton?
Yeah.
Because a man designed them, you know. So you've got a really heavy seat, and then you put a 10-pound baby in it. So you're carrying around with not strong abs. You're breastfeeding, so you've got hormones in your body, you've got relaxin in your body, maybe breastfeeding. So your muscles aren't working, everything isn't working quite as efficiently as it should. And you pick up this dead weight.
Yeah.
You know, or you lean into the bath to get the toddlers out the bath. All of that is taking immense strain on your body, but mums don't have any choice because there's nobody else around to pick them up, you know, 9 times out of 10. Why can't baby car seats be made out of carbon fibre, which is very light? They make cars and aeroplanes, so they must be safe, but it's expensive.
Yeah.
So it's too expensive for anyone to bother. But if they make them, bicycles are made of carbon fibre now. You know, you can pick them up with your little finger. It's things like that. No one's really thought about it. What did you say?
But I hear you. I had twins.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you think multiple births, they're red flags. So multiple births or births close together are red flags. So medics should automatically be checking for a diastase under those circumstances, but they don't.
No, I didn't.
As much, some do, but not enough.
No, I had the usual, how are you feeling? Prescription of antidepressants. And then I think the health visitor may have had a little look at my episiotomy, asked me if I'd had a look at it, and that was it.
But that same conversation is happening now 20 years later.
Yeah, I know.
So that's my argument, that the same, so there's nothing else that stood still like that in medicine.
Well, my mum says the same. You know, my mum says, oh, you know, that's kind of what they were doing when I had you, and the same advice, the same treatment. It's just, yeah. So I just think we need to start talking about it. It's not okay to wear tenor pads. No.
The only people who think it's okay to wear tenor pads are tenor pads. And to make the adverts glamorous, so it looks like it's glamorous to me.
Oh, have you seen the yoga one now?
Yeah, just does my head in.
No, it's just awful when she can't do some pose because she might pee herself, and then her friend goes, oh, don't worry, I'm peeing into this, basically.
Yes, exactly. And it seems okay to not seek a repair.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know who these people are who are on here or who's going to be watching this, but I hope that some people are sort of getting the message that we don't have to make do anymore.
No.
And you know that it's not okay.
No, absolutely. Has anybody got any questions? Because we've been rabbiting on for quite a long time. We've got about 10 minutes at the end if anybody wants any questions, or Sam and I can carry on talking.
Oh, Susan
got her hand up, so just unmute for me.
Yeah. Hello, it's been really lovely to hear all about this, and I'm just wondering, how will we know, you know, whether we have got tummy trouble? Because I've suffered with weak stomach muscles ever since I've had my 3 children, 2 cesareans, and my youngest is 25 now. Is it something that you can dig your fingers into, like you were saying, or?
Yeah, so the normal way you do it is you lie down flat on your back. You do the one thing that I would say that anybody with a diastase shouldn't do, which is do a crunch, a head lift. But under those controlled circumstances, it's okay, because I need to see the activation of the walls of the muscles. We've got, I should have had a picture, but we've got the rectus abdominis is your central muscle running down the front of your abs, and to hold the growing baby, it separates. So you end up with, you know, with that kind of look, because you've got the growing baby inside. And afterwards, if you're lucky, eventually it will go like that. But for some people, it stays. And again, this is what I touched on with Nikki. It's a connective tissue issue.
Right.
Now, I will never say when I'm not sober, because it won't come out right. It sounds like I'm sneezing.
When you've had a drink, I mean, not when... Yeah, well, yeah, when you're not sober, sorry.
Yes, yeah, because it sounds like I'm having a sneezing fit, but it is a connective tissue issue, and what we need to do is build the tissue up underneath. So when you do this head lift, then we use the fingers facing in that way, so it looks like I'm giving you the finger, but I'm not. And it gets even worse when I'm trying to demonstrate it with my fingers. So just let your imagination run wild. So if you imagine that's the diastase, you would measure it that way. So you'd go in that way like this, okay? And we use a finger for a centimetre. So normally if I can get 3 fingers in, then I know we've got some work to do. 2 fingers, and I know Nikki was asking about time distance earlier. If it's 2 fingers, I know that potentially is a pretty quick fix with hypopressives. If it's 3 fingers, it's a little longer. And the last thing I want to see is the top coming together, this bit coming together before all of this has, because it will be very superficial then. So you could have a fall, or God forbid, go on a trampoline. Never go on a trampoline when you've got any of these issues, by the way, and could make it worse. So the most important thing first is that the connective tissue is rejoined first, is strengthened, and then that builds up, and then finally you begin to close the top bit. And it doesn't matter how old your diastase is, it's not the age of it that can slow you down. So I was 14 years postnatal, but I've worked with a woman who was 25 years postnatal. So the issues you will have if it goes undetected is a dysfunctional pelvic floor. It won't connect properly, and so and your muscles are potentially going to get wider apart. My mum, for example, had 4 babies and loved to tell me that my head was enormous and I caused her great pain. And I did, she said, grow into it, but I've always been big boned. So I caused her a lot of damage. Now, she was a tiny lady, but she always had a tummy. And I realised later on, when I became a women's health specialist, that she probably had an undetected diastase.
Yeah.
So what it gives you is poor posture, backache, and pelvic floor issues, so prolapsing, for example. Hernias, again, could come as a result of that. So there are lots of reasons why. Bladder issues is very common, so leaking, as Nikki mentioned earlier, is a problem. So all those sort of problems.
Okay.
But so you could lie down, and you need to not hold your breath while you're doing it. Just breathe normally, lift your head up off the floor, eye line towards the knees, and then put your fingers along the tummy line. So from top to bottom, from the sternum down to the pubic bone.
Yeah.
Normally it will be worse around the tummy button. So that normally that's your weakest point. And quite often people don't close at that point because that's the bit where the umbilicus is attached. So it's your weakest point. But everywhere else above and below needs to be closed completely. And quite often if you've got a wider gap up above than you do anywhere else, that will have been a tear, a more severe, a more traumatic injury. So that can take a lot longer to close. So normally when you're closing the abs, the top and the bottom will close first, and then finally the tummy, around the tummy button. So
when you talk about, just to make something clear, when you talk about close completely, we never close completely because there's always a natural gap.
Sorry, yes, but you shouldn't be able to get your finger in between it.
And the other thing that probably you have touched on but I've missed is that kind of tensile strength of the tissue. Yes. How kind of bouncy that is, how much that tissue can handle pressure.
So you want to, as you feel down, you want to feel, is the tissue pushing back against you? Are you feeling that connectivity? Yeah. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. But
you're right. Good question. Are you going to check yourself now?
Yes.
Good.
But I'll just say as well, my daughter has just had a baby, staying with me at the moment, and the car seat is so heavy. It weighs a ton and it pulls my tummy like mad, and it's just so unnecessary, isn't it?
Enough said. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we need to start making some noise.
Yeah. Thank you very much then.
Pleasure, Susan.
Fiona.
Hi, Sam. I'm actually a retired obstetrician, and a lot of what you say is absolutely right. I was a gynecologist as well, that there isn't awareness, even amongst obstetricians and gynecologists, and particularly urogynecologists, about diastasis and how to treat it. I think the problem is, and I did touch on this when Nikki and I spoke a few weeks ago, that there's not a lot of research evidence, and that's always the problem with the health service, that in order for NICE to take this on board, they're going to want good research evidence. Mm-hmm. You're also going to need pathways of care in place that women who can't afford to pay for it can access, because, you know, not all women can afford even to go to Pilates classes nowadays. And, you know, whilst I think the work you and Nikki are doing are excellent, to change things, it's got to be available to all women. Yeah. And it's how we tackle getting that available to all women. We're having personal experience. Our daughter has diastasis rectus after having had 2 children. She had a very bad experience with a women's health physio, our daughter is also a medic, so she knew that the exercises she was being given to do, which was basically strengthening the rectus, and the exercise was given on her all fours and contracting her rectus muscle. You couldn't have had a worse exercise to do, really, in the early stages when she had a 10-centimetre separation.
Wow.
Yeah. She's actually, I mean, she is doing hypopressives. She's also looked at the Tupler technique, and she's been doing that for 3 weeks, and she's already getting significant closure. So, you know, I think there's a combination of stuff out there that needs looking at.
Right.
So there's a lot to do, but the big thing will be putting in the pathways of care.
Yeah, I did say that. I did say that in my list of things that I didn't read it out, but that we need to put the money in, the provision in place, so that there's subsidised options for people who can't afford to pay for themselves.
Absolutely.
I'm absolutely aware of that. So yeah, for sure. But everyone, I think, needs to be, like you said, on the same page. We need to be following the same guidelines. And you're right. I mentioned that a lot of the research I was looking at was 20 years old. So trying to compile data that projects are, you know, I can only talk about my own experiences. So I keep those cases as example. That's the best that I can do at the moment. But yes, you're right. We need to get some more research done on it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there are statistics out there, but they're not up to date.
But if you're all keeping, you know, even developing a database of the measurements that you should take, when you take them, the improvements you get, symptoms, that's a start of a research paper. Yes. You know, you could start to build that evidence. There's enough of you sort of doing it, who could start to build that evidence to put something together. And I'm sure, I mean, I'd listened to Anna Crowell's issue, and I think she is amazing. I think she's got an amazing,
she's great.
She's fantastic. Just the other was on a more light-hearted note. Why not go, not as a well, you could go as a pregnant woman, but why not paint 2 rectus muscles on the front of your bump separated?
That's a good idea. That's even better. Yeah. Great
because
idea.
That gets your message straight across, you know.
Absolutely.
Even if you put 2 rubber tiles.
Yeah, brilliant. I love it. Yes,
Yeah,
thank you for that. You're obviously good at thinking outside the box.
We could get a good PR campaign behind you, Sam, so we get you all over the TV doing your marathons.
That's a great idea, though, having a T-shirt with the separated muscles.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you're trying to say, not pregnancy. You're trying to say about the diastasis.
Yeah, because what worried me about actually being pregnant was I wouldn't actually want a pregnant lady running a marathon. So, kind of a mixed
so you could just have a big belly with 2 muscles. And you can either take that as this is what happens during pregnancy, or you can take it, this is what might have happened after you've had pregnancy. You can take it either way, can't you?
Yeah, like that. Yeah, great.
Great idea.
I was just hoping that the swollen belly would explain why I was walking. My final marathon, I'm not going to run anymore after this one.
I think you've done brilliantly. I can't run anymore, so there we go. Right, has anyone got any more questions for us?
Thank you for that, Fiona. That was really good points.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's probably it. Don't have any more.
I just want to say, watch this space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing, is it's getting people, well, it's like Anna Crowell says, we are the revolution. Whatever you're passionate about, you know, I'm passionate about getting the word about hypopressives out there because of the amazing work that is, you know, the amazing results I've had with my clients, clients that have been, you know, desperate because that nothing seems to work, and they're, you know, they really want to avoid surgery, and you know, so this is your passion, and so, you know, we have to kind of start talking about these things and start working together, everyone working together instead of against each other, you know, and just really getting that message out there that this isn't good enough. We're worth more than that, aren't we, Sam?
For sure, yeah.
Sure. So if people want to follow your campaign, do you want to give out any details about?
Well, we'll be going on my website. It's not on there at the moment, but if you just Google Oobermamma, you'll find my website, and I'm going to start doing some Instagram. My hope is to get some influencers in. I've got my eye on Stacey Solomon because I think she's a perfect candidate.
She's amazing. Yeah, she's amazing.
She's very popular. So
when you put stuff out on social media, are you atting Holly Willoughby?
No, but I will do. I'm just about to move house. So my plan is that once I've moved house, then I'll be more focused on the campaign, and I'll launch an Instagram account, because my web designer is adding a page to my website, but I want it all to go out at the same time, so people then have that connection. So this is very much in its pre-pregnancy stages, so we say.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah. I'm happy. Like I said, as soon as you start getting stuff out regularly, just give me one post a week, and I'll.
Yeah, thank you. That'd be fantastic. Yeah.
I'll tag in.
And just keep an eye out for them. Yeah.
Well, I'm already following Holly, so I'll have to find Phil on there and start following Phil and start.
Well, he said today, apparently, I was training a client and she had the TV on in the background, and he said that he did an 8-minute plank. I was quite impressed.
Yeah.
But I was quite impressed. I would have thought it was hard work.
I think the trouble with that again is that people think that's a test of how amazingly strong his abs are, and it's not. What is that a test of?
Optimum plank for your abs is 20 to 30 seconds. Anything after that, it's all about endurance. Yeah. And too much stress on
using your back.
Like Fiona said, to be in a forward position with a 5-finger diastase, 10-finger diastase, any sort of diastase, to be in that gravitational pull position where everything is going to be pushing out against it. Not great.
Right. Well, we will eagerly await the launch of your Instagram account, and we'll eagerly await you getting it on the website so that we can all start sharing and following.
Thank you very much, and thanks for asking me to.
And I look forward to seeing you on Holly and Phil very soon.
Thanks, Nikki.
Absolutely lovely to talk to you today, Sam. Thank you everybody that joined us. I hope you enjoyed that.
Thank you very much.
Catching this on a recording. I'm really sorry if there's a break in the recording. Technical issues, my Wi-Fi went down, so I'm not sure that it carried on recording through that bit if I'm honest, but yeah, so hopefully we filled the gap towards the end with our waffle at the end. Lovely to see you all tonight, and thanks for joining us. Take care.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.